Welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlotte. I'm the trauma-informed teacher, and this is Teacher Tip Friday. It's the end of the school year, and you are probably finding that your students who have become a family are now behaving like siblings who have a lot of rivalry. There are more and more disgruntled students at the end of the year. They get on each other's nerves. Sometimes they get on our nerves as well in the whole process. It's just part of the learning throughout the year. As we grow closer together, we start to annoy each other a little bit more. Sometimes this is just childish behavior, immaturity, but other times it can be more serious. And today I want to talk to you about one key change that you can make in your classroom that will prevent bullying. I had a request for this on one of my recent Teacher Tip Friday videos. What do you do about bullying, right? It's definitely a problem in our schools today, and we are trying to implement more restorative practices in our school district, and I see that across the United States. The idea behind restorative practices is to basically teach students appropriate social behavior that would encourage them to be more positive in the way that they interact with others, in the effort that they put forth in important things, and how they prioritize their academics, and all these different things that naturally, we hope that parents are doing these things, but the reality is that in some families, parents either do not know how to do these things because they were never trained how to do them themselves, or they might just not have enough time due to the fact that it is entirely possible they are working several jobs in order to just make ends meet. So it's more important than ever that we know how to address bullying in our schools, in our communities. Most of the time, when you think of bullying prevention, we think of these programs that come in, teach kids how to recognize bullying, what it is, and what it isn't. However, sometimes those programs can have the effect of drawing attention to negative behaviors, and that's not what we want to do. There is a place for that. Our students do need to know what is the difference between just teasing and bullying, how to spot it, when they need to get help, when they need to talk to an adult. I want you to understand that I am not negating the importance of any of those things. But what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit of a shift in your thought process around the idea of bullying prevention. What I want to talk to you about today is teaching kindness and how much it matters. I did a little bit of research and found out that there are statistics that prove that when elementary students performed 3 acts of kindness per week, it significantly increased their acceptance of peers compared to when they didn't. Students who are taught kindness are more empathetic, they are more socially aware, and they feel connected. They also receive higher grades. Everyone wants to belong, and teaching kindness is one way that we can assure that students they feel like they're part of the learning community. So how do we teach kindness? There are some elements that I want to talk to you about. This is from stopbullying.gov, and I will place the link below in case you want to do a little more research. There are some great resources that are available, activities, lesson plans that you can implement, but I'm going to just talk about the basics today. Number 1, include gratitude activities. How many times have you heard people say, if you're having a low time in your life, start a gratitude journal? This just really retrains our brains to think about the positive things that are happening instead of the negative. As people, we are sort of wired to remember the negative and to focus less on the positive. And so really forcing your brain to make those connections with what's happening right now that you actually are happy about, that's really going to help your students. It's really going to help you as an educator. And it makes neural pathways in the brain that cause you to be more likely to think positively in the future. So try scheduling just 5 minutes even for yourself and for your students to create a gratitude list on a regular basis and see how much difference it makes in students' outlook. Number 2, include volunteer activities and service learning opportunities for your students. A couple of ideas that you can do are writing letters. It could be pen pal letters to, let's say, servicemen, or it could be to people in one of your local senior communities. There are often community centers that involve your local seniors, but you also have like your local nursing home or rehabilitation centers where you may find a lot of elderly people who just really need some company. This is going to help both sides. It's going to help your students relate to and understand elderly people better, and it's going to help your elderly community to connect and be part of your school community. So it's really a win-win. Elderly people love the energy of youth, and so it's been shown that it actually increases their lifespan when they interact with young people. So think of some simple ways that you can be a blessing to your senior community, and that's a great service learning opportunity. Another thing that we have done in our school is to have food drives and to participate through our Beta Club in passing out boxes of food at our local food bank. Have students actually work on planning the activity, and that goes into my idea number 3. Whenever you do something with students that's a volunteer activity or a service learning project, you can really help students develop leadership skills that will help them the rest of their lives if you don't just tell them everything that's going to happen and how to do it, but if you give them some options instead and let them choose. Help them organize themselves into teams. Don't place them into teams. Let them choose the teams. Let the natural leaders emerge, and then support their leadership skills by showing them what's the next step. What do we need to plan for? What are the materials we're going to need? How will we get them? What's the time frame this is going to happen in? How will we get our transportation to whatever we're doing? All of those things are important for students to develop if they want to be ready to be part of the workforce when they get out of high school. Also, when students participate in volunteer or service activities, it helps them think outside of themselves. One of the problems that we have in bullying is that students are inwardly focused. It's all about me. How are people treating me? Are people making me feel better about myself? Do I have enough friends? Do I like the people in this school? But when they're focused on you, them, they, how are we going to help? That is not only helping them to shift their mindset to a more positive focus, but it's helping them to shift to an others-centered instead of a me-centered, which is a more mature outlook, and it helps them feel positive about themselves when they're doing something positive for other people. So make sure you include opportunities for students to participate in service learning. There are so many options. Just start researching online. I will place a link for some of the ideas below, but it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to take a lot of people or a lot of time in order to be effective in helping students develop these outward-centered skills. Okay, thanks. Yeah, what time is it now? Okay. One thing I've done with my homeroom this year, fire drill. Okay. One of the things I have had to do in my homeroom this year is to plan my SEL activities for homeroom time, my advisory time. If you don't have a time built into your day, you might actually have to spend some class time doing this, but I promise you, this is going to pay yourself dividends later on if you take the class time up front to go through these conflicts that you're having, because over time your conflict will decrease in your class and you'll have more learning time that you will gain back in the end. So more work up front with teaching the skills of conflict resolution, conflict management, what to do when you have a disagreement with someone, what not to do. Those things are like really important. As an educator, it's also very important that you serve as the model for respectful treatment of your students. In order for them to be able to handle themselves well, you have to handle yourself well. So when you find yourself being escalated, you just need to take a pause, take a deep breath, count to 10, think about what's happening, think about what the motivation is for the student, what do they want, what do they need at the moment that they're trying to get in an immature way, and then respond accordingly. Sometimes when I feel really escalated by a student's behavior, I don't respond in the same class period. As long as other students around them are, safe, I will, do what I can, maybe just sort of like make myself a physical presence in the area where the conflict is happening. Or if needed, I might have to bounce one of the students involved in the conflict to another classroom temporarily until they calm down and I calm down, and then we can all discuss it together at a better time. So pick and choose your moments. Make sure that your students are fresh and receptive and not in the middle of the conflict. If it is a deeper conflict, when you go to try to talk about it. A lot of times after students get through the emotion that they're experiencing, then they can have a reasonable conversation, many of them, especially if you're taking it from a standpoint of you're trying to help them. What is the goal? What is the reason why you're talking about this? You want to help them, help themselves. You want them to experience a better environment at school. Think about how does it benefit them if they adopt these different ways of handling conflict and approach it from that direction. You'll get a lot more positive response from your students. This is not something that you can do overnight. It's going to take time. It could take months and months of working with your students. This year, I had a lot of conflict in my homeroom class because we had two smaller classes that had to be put together, and we had some big personalities in both classes that did not get along, that did not previously like to work together, and we had to merge those things. I can honestly say after working with that group of students over time, and all of them, mind you, I loved all of them individually, but just something about the chemistry when they got together, and if they're watching this video, they know what I'm talking about. They just had a hard time working together. So we had a lot of conflict. It's not all perfect. It's some of it's still going on, but they have definitely gained a lot of skills, and we have a lot fewer problems and less frequent than we used to by taking the time over time to work on our conflict management skills, on our discussion skills, on things like assertive communication. Rather than being rude, be assertive, learning the difference in what those languages sound like compared to each other. That's really helped my students. One of the ways that you can accomplish this is by generating open-ended discussion questions. And I like to use scenarios. I will place a link below that can allow you to explore some of these resources. There are several good places that you can find scenario resources, but giving students an opportunity to talk about how they feel about a specific scenario, what their reaction would be, and what the consequences of those reactions would be is a great place to start with positively teaching communication skills and conflict management. Number 5, encourage your students to work together. Our students are not going to be automatically good at being team members, but giving them the opportunity to regularly work together and then taking the time at the end of those short time periods to reflect on how they work together. What did they do well as a team? What do they need to work on next time? What do they need from the teacher to help them? How do we deal with a problem? For example, if a student is just sitting there, not taking part in the group, making everyone else do all the work, what do we do about that student? If, on the other hand, another student is taking over the whole thing and trying to make the project theirs or the work task theirs, What do we do about that? Students need time to ask their teacher questions about the problems they're having and then get some adult guidance about how they can proactively handle that. This is so important to 21st century learning. I cannot emphasize enough, as much as it might slow down your progress, later on, you're going to be able to speed up because your students are going to learn some skills, not just skills that will benefit them in your classroom with collaboration, but also they're going to learn skills that will help them the rest of their adult lives, and that's what we want. One of the number one things that employees look for is students or people coming out of school that can work in teams. And they need to be able to work in teams with people that they don't necessarily agree with, people that are different from them, from different backgrounds, different values, systems. And, if they can do that, they're going to be very employable. Last, but certainly not least, is to model naming and expressing their emotions. Many students are not in touch with their emotions. They might have some trauma responses to things, and you cannot be the be-all, end-all. So know when it's your time that you need to hand it over to your school counselor, the social worker, the psychologist. Make sure that you're aware of those procedures in your particular district, in your building. But there's a lot that we can do with helping students understand, what is the emotion they're experiencing and what can you do to de-escalate your emotions when they're not positive. There is a spectrum of narcissistic behavior, meaning people that think that everything is about themselves. And you don't have to be a full-on narcissist, like classified medically as a narcissist, or psychologically as a narcissist, to have some of those traits. One of the biggest things that research has found about narcissistic behavior is that people that exhibit some of these behaviors, they didn't receive that modeling of emotions that you often hope that parents will do for students or for kids when they're little. So for example, I fall down, I get hurt, and I'm crying. Hopefully I'll have a parent or caregiver that will come up to me and say, "Oh, you're sad, you hurt yourself," or whatever the child is feeling. Having that mirrored back to themselves and having the emotion taught to them, you're experiencing this emotion right now because this happened. Let's go do this. And a positive response to that. That is so important to a healthy developing child. And when they don't get that mirroring because either a parent is absent, a parent is, abusive, angry, neglectful, whatever, or the parent just simply does not know how to handle their own emotions, so they can't teach a child how to. When those things occur, a student lacks those skills. So being able to talk to students about the range of emotions that they might be experiencing, even saying, "Are you feeling this way? Do you maybe want to do this? Or would it be better if you did that?" Giving them some options for how to handle those strong emotions can go a long way towards helping students become better managers of their feelings and knowing what to do on their own without adult intervention. I hope that you've enjoyed these tips for teaching kindness. I believe firmly that teaching the positive is going to be much more effective than focusing on the negatives when it comes to bullying prevention. That's it for today's Teacher Tip Friday. Don't forget to work hard, be kind, and amazing things will happen. Bye-bye.